Welcome to Shit I Wish Someone Told Me, a weekly series of educational conversations where my guests and I talk about all of the shit that we wish someone had told us at one point or another, all of which relate back to the most important topic of all, you, and figuring out who that person is, how to accept and be confident in that person so that you can be who you were born to be. I am your host, Johnna Renée, certified evidence-based life coach specializing in behavioral change, teaching you research-backed techniques using brain science to help you finally feel good and become the person that you need to be in order to have the life that you want. And joining us today, we have Rachael Lanning of Rachael.rsl, and she is a relationship coach. And spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about healthy relationships because we've all seen the post about the narcissist and the red flags, and important, valid, you need to know that. But we want to bring something to the forefront of your awareness about the specifics of what it looks like to actually cultivate a healthy relationship and some things that you need to know about that. So we are going to be specifically focusing on those foundational things that we feel you need to know. Whether you consider yourself someone who has a healthy relationship, or if you're someone who might want to have a healthy relationship or create more healthy relationships in your life. Either way, we have lots of good shit to share with you. And we are going to be doing this conversation to kind of lay the framework like we did with Boundaries 101. And we're going to be offering you upcoming conversations where we talk about specifically what it looks like to create healthy relationships in different capacities, like healthy relationships with yourselves, healthy relationships with your family, your romantic partners, and all of that good stuff. So make sure to stay tuned. Our goal for today is in helping you understand that if you haven't been able to have healthy relationships in the past, that it isn't your fault. There is nothing wrong with you. And what we are here to do today is to help you get clarity on what a healthy relationship actually looks like for you, and to help you understand why you might not have been able to have them in the past, and provide you with some things that you can do to start to cultivate healthy relationships in your life today. So with that, I want you to consider the relationships in your life as you listen to our conversation today, and how those relationships make a difference when it comes to how you relate to yourself and how you see yourself. And so with that being said, let me introduce you to our guest for today. So Rachael Lanning is a relationship coach. Like I said, she helps women feel empowered and in control of their relationships by ditching emotionally unavailable guys. And so we are so grateful that you are here. Do you have anything else that you would like to add or mention?
I don't think so. I think there's a lot of other terms we can use for emotionally unavailable guys. I like to use the term fuckboys.
Yeah,
I think
that's a
we
good
all
one.
know. I think we all know what a fuckboy is. But
We all
no,
might
yeah,
know a
that's
couple.
great. Yeah, a couple for sure. But no, that's exactly what I do, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me, and this is going to be a really good conversation. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. And just also fuck boys, there are also fuck girls. Let's not just,
Oh, absolutely,
yeah,
100%,
let's
100%.
don't want anyone listening to think that we're just going to be like, bashing men. That's not what this conversation is at all.
No,
Um,
no.
we're talking about like having an awareness of, like, that's the term that we all know we can relate to. And also we're going to be talking about how to, like I said, have healthy relationships. And that's going to be the primary focus of this conversation. So
Absolutely. And it applies to everyone.
yes, everyone. So, all right. With that being said, what is some shit that you wish someone would have told you about healthy relationships?
So for me, that would be that relationships are a skill.
Mm,
And what that essentially means is that I think that we don't realize there's so much happening beneath the surface, beneath our consciousness. So we actually learned how to be in relationships. We learned what love is a very, very long time ago. And we don't often realize that, like, as we go into adulthood, unless we learned something different somewhere along the way, we're still operating on those old beliefs, on all of those things that we
right.
absorbed as children, those relationships we had with our parents, those things that we've been through that left an emotional mark on us. Those are still very much alive with us today. So, in order to change the way that we have been in relationships in adulthood, we actually need to, like any skill, we actually need to go in there and refine it and practice and learn how to replace those old behaviors with new ones. And it takes time. It's a process. And I really want people to understand that, like you said earlier, there isn't anything wrong with you. We might just have to go in there and do a little reprogramming, a little healing, to really get you to a place where you feel good about your relationship with yourself and with other people.
Yeah. So we're going like right for the jugular, y'all. Like we went right in there. Like you
Oh, yeah.
the healthy relationships, or the relationship, dynamics that we have in general, like you said, comes from this place that we learned at a very young age, like how we learned how to relate to people. And something that I like to offer anyone that will listen is the notion that how we do anything, if we're not really aware of it, like we're kind of just running on, default, we're running on autopilot, right? And
Absolutely.
so I like to think of it as, we've all seen A Million Friends episodes, and it's something where even though we haven't seen that episode in like 10 years, if you put it on, we're going to be able to recite it in the same tone, at the same timing, the same
Sure.
exact script. And most of us are operating on similar scripts within our own belief system and what we have learned to believe a healthy relationship looks like, or what we've learned to believe, anything looks like. But for our conversation today, a relationship. And I think it's something where, we spoke about this, like, I wish that someone would have actually explained to me, like, this is what a healthy relationship is. Because
Yes.
oftentimes I think that, running on those old scripts that we just, no one ever told us to even look at or consider rewriting, it's something where we grow up to think that, relationships mean pain, and that's what's
Right.
normal, right? And we
Yep.
go to what's familiar, not what's best for us, because if it's familiar, then we know that we can survive it, even if it sucks. And so it's something where, yeah, we don't take the time to actually consider, like, oh, what is a healthy relationship? And oh,
Sure.
I shouldn't expect to be disappointed, and I
Right.
shouldn't expect to be abandoned. And that's not normal. And so if we never take a step back to like look at these patterns and to consider, like, oh, I've just been, going through the motions and recreating the same scenarios, then it's
Yep.
something where, we oftentimes don't find ourselves in a healthy relationship because we don't know what one actually looks like.
Yeah. 1,000%. You completely hit the nail on the head there. Something that I find, even with myself, I've had this experience, like we don't often realize there's a pattern until we almost hit that rock bottom,
Yeah.
until we get so sick of dealing with the same types of people, dating the same types of people with a different face, going through all of that pain, that struggle. It often takes us time to get to the place where we start to have this awareness, like there's a pattern here. Like all of my relationships look the same. They all go the same way. They all make me feel the same level of shittiness, whatever it
Right.
is. It takes us time to get to that point. So, really, like part of my goal as a coach is maybe there's a way for us to get people there before they hit that point. Maybe there's a way to like
Yes.
help them become aware of it before
Yes.
they hit that rock bottom.
I love
Right.
that.
Because it's the same with any type of like in therapy, they say like people don't often go till they're in crisis, but you absolutely can go before you hit that point.
Yeah. I love that so much. And that is something that, yeah, like a lot of times we get tired of our own bullshit, right? Like we are just like, all right, fuck this. Like I'm over it. Like, and that's when you
Yeah.
decide to change, whether it
Yeah.
be weight or a job or a relationship
Totally.
or a habit that you want to change. We will keep doing it because no one's ever told us to take the time and like step back. That's why people have midlife crises, right? Because
Yep.
they have just been going through the motions for so long. And then suddenly they're like, whoa, I don't want to do this. And it doesn't have to get to that point. And so I love that you brought that up, because for anyone right now who is listening, who is not, in a shitty situation, let this be your gentle invitation to just take an inventory of the relationships in your life so that you can start to see which ones are healthy based on the things that we're going to share about what healthy relationships look like, and which ones might not be serving you. And that's not to say that we need to like never talk to those people again, but it is to say that when you have that awareness, you are empowered with choice and you are empowered with knowledge. Like, do I want to spend as much time with this person, with this situation as I have been? now knowing what I know, now taking that step back and like actually reading the script of the Friends episode, right? Instead of just reciting it.
Absolutely. And you said something before, which is basically like, and I was thinking like, if you didn't have those role models when you were young to show you what a healthy relationship looks like, you're likely not going to know what it is now. And there's a lot of information out there about, red flags and unhealthy relationships. And I think it's really important to remind people of what exactly a healthy relationship looks like and feels like, especially if you've never had it before. Your nervous system is not, well, I took a lot about the nervous system. Because that's really the thing that like protects us, keeps us safe. And it's really the reason that we often feel stuck in certain areas in life, because the nervous system will not let you do anything it does not feel safe with. Right. So if you've never had those healthy relationships, the reason that you're stuck in these patterns is because your nervous system will not let you be in a healthy relationship if it's not familiar to you.
Right.
Which is essentially what you said before.
Yeah.
So really the work is, how do I get my nervous system to feel safe with healthy relationships?
Yeah. Because, and I want to point this out for anyone that's not aware, it's oftentimes where when we do find ourselves in the healthy relationship, if that's not the norm, then we will do things to create the chaos that we are familiar with, because your body is addicted to those chemicals. Your body is addicted to those things that are those sensations and those feelings and emotions that are created, because even if that's not what you consciously want, that is what your body knows to, like Rachel said, be normal and familiar. And so if that's not present anymore, then that sends a signal to your body saying, hey, this isn't normal. We don't know how this is going to turn out. So even if consciously you are like, no, this is good, body, like this is good. We want this. We love this. We need this. Yes. Your brain will do its best to teach you or to convince you otherwise, because it's like, nay, but this is unfamiliar and my job is to keep you in the familiar. And so it's something where I want to point that out, because I think that so many of us, as we are trying to cultivate these healthy relationships, find ourselves in that like tug of war, if you will, with the past self and like the things that we don't want, but that we know, and this new self that we've heard about, we've dreamed about, we won't, but at the same time, we don't know.
Yes, 100%.
That can be defeating.
It totally. And I can't tell you how many clients I personally work with that will say like, I know that I choose these men. I don't know how to change it. I don't know what to do, because it's almost like they start dating men and essentially really it's like that attachment kicks in, right? Those attachment wounds that they haven't healed yet kick in, and it's causing them to like stay on this pattern, but they don't know, they don't have the tools yet to know how to change it. So they have the awareness, like, I know I do this thing. I know, like you said, like, I know this one guy could be amazing for me. He's into me. He's, giving me the reassurance. He feels safe, but I know I'm going to start to sabotage it. I can't tell you how many women are in that place where it's like that tug of war, like you said. And that's a really frustrating place to be in, because it's like, I've tried all the things. Why is nothing working?
Yeah. I think if I could offer, we usually do key takeaways at the end, but if I could offer like thus far, that would by far be the key takeaway. Like, know that it's not you. And we'd said that at the beginning, you said that was a goal that you had for this conversation as well, is for you to not feel like, for you to recognize it's not your fault. And I think that like, that's the key to that recognition, like the fact that we just explained what is biologically happening in your body, like you are addicted to that. And so even though you consciously know, like, it's something where I think with that awareness, you're empowered to know that, hey, like, it's not me. Like, it's literally what my body is designed to do, and my body is just doing its job, and cool. And at the same time, I am the one that is in control, and I'm the one that is able to change that. So I think I would say that sidebar, main bar, that would be like my key takeaway thus far. But one of the questions that I had along those same lines is, you mentioned that that's a main struggle that you see people in your clients coming to you with, is that, they know that they want differently, and they know that this could be a really good thing, but they end up sabotaging it. And so, what other struggles do you see your clients coming to you with as a relationship coach?
One of the there's like the obvious struggles, right? Of like choosing emotionally unavailable guys, trying to get them to change, trying to get them to love you, to want you.
Right. And can we talk about why they do that really quick?
Sure. Yeah. Essentially what I've often found, and I honestly have personally experienced this myself, and I talk about that a lot on my Instagram. But essentially, like we said, like you learned from one relationship or one or more relationships in your life that you had to like work for love. That the person you're supposed to be with should be that more avoidant person where you have to chase them. You have to do the most to get them. And like we've been talking about, that's all mainly subconscious. It's all a pattern that you're like operating on, a script you're operating on. And the other thing I also find is that many of the clients I work with like don't understand themselves. They don't feel this like sense of self-worth, like this high self-worth. So there's also this element to it where the relationship they have with themselves is almost kind of like like fragile and they don't have that foundation yet. Right. Because they've spent so long like operating on these patterns of like, I need to get someone to choose me rather than, and that like disempowered state rather than an empowered state of like, I know who I am, I'm confident in myself, I know what I deserve, and that's where I'm gonna stand firmly and go about relationships in that secure manner.
Right.
But the thing I find that I work with clients a lot on is really like self-acceptance and not just like in a general sense, but a lot of the clients I work with don't allow themselves to feel their emotions. They're very in their head. They get stuck in these cycles of like, well, why does this guy do this? Like, why is this like this? Like they're very, very logical in their minds, and they haven't yet learned to drop into their bodies and allow themselves to feel their emotions. So for example, I will speak to a client and ask them, well, how do you feel about that? And rather than tell me how they felt, they'll give me the logical answer, and they'll start to like go off on like what happened in the story of what happened. And really what my job is to like bring them back into their bodies and like, no. How did it make you feel? Which is a really important element of having a really good relationship with yourself, is that self-acceptance piece and accepting every part of us.
Yeah. I am so glad that you brought this up, because I think that so many people look externally for validation. And like you said, we learn these things very young. And I love that you mentioned that, like, it's not just one situation, it's that one planted the seed to create the blueprint, which we then carried out again and again and again. And it's something where, like we said, before you turn around, like you can recite the script on autopilot and you don't even necessarily, like, you weren't even aware of the fact that it was happening. And we spend so much time seeking to recreate that pattern because that's the familiar known, and seeking that external validation, when really the validation needs to, exactly like what you said, be within ourselves, and not just the, oh, like I graduated college and got a, awesome job, like the things that we, our society tells us are things to be proud of, but also the parts of ourselves that we might not necessarily be so proud of. I talk about that actually in my program with my clients, where the lesson is self-love, but self-love is really just self-acceptance, because you can't love something that you don't accept, and you can't accept something that you don't know what it actually is, right? Like that doesn't make sense. Like if I don't know and understand like who I am, then how am I ever fully going to accept that person? And so, it's kind of like a chain of events in that sense, and one that really starts with you and universal you, not just like you, Rachel, you, Johnna, but like you, like listening and watching, like you, individual you. And it's something where I love that you said that you ask, how did that make you feel? And people start to, oh, well, this is what happened. And it's like, cool. That's not what we were talking about. Like, we're talking about how you feel about what happened. And I think that that's a scary thing for people to do. We did a whole ass episode. It's literally called The Cost of Not Feeling Your Feelings. And so there's tons of information on that. I will link it in the description here. But yeah, we literally did an episode on that. And we spoke to that exact point. Like, if you are not allowing yourself to feel those feelings, then it's something where you really lose your sense of self, because you don't even know what your opinions are on things, because you don't take that pause to consider. And so when that happens, we oftentimes, how am I supposed to know if I'm in a healthy relationship or not, if I'm just kind of paying attention to what everyone else is feeling and thinking, right? Like, how am I supposed to know if I don't, how am I supposed to be in a healthy relationship if I'm not able to communicate what it is that I'm feeling? And that can't happen if I don't even know what that feeling is.
That's 1,000% right. And you said it before. So many people are seeking validation from others, right? And I think there are too many people who believe that finding the one or being in a relationship is supposed to somehow complete you and make you happy and change your life, right? And there's a lot of people out there who are like constantly in search for this one or this relationship, hoping it will change their life. And I think on the topic of healthy relationships, that's actually not the case. And that's not indicative of a healthy relationship, because actually what a healthy relationship is two people who are whole and complete on their own, who are doing the work, and they come together to create something beautiful, right? And there's actually a word for this. It's interdependence, right? Like, we don't want to be so independent to where we're not creating that connection with our partners. And we don't want to be so dependent to where we lose our sense of self. We want to be able to create this beautiful balance of interdependence where we have our own life, our own interests, we're responsible for ourselves, but we can come together with our partner and have that beautiful, healthy relationship.
Yeah. Ooh, drop the mic. Yeah. That. So I think that so many people, like you said, are looking for the one. There's 7 billion people on the planet. There's not one person. Like, there are many people that you could be in a relationship with. It's just a matter of you recognizing that no one else is the one, you are. And that is something that one of my previous relationships taught me. Is about what was my last relationship. That is something my last relationship taught me, is I was like, hold on, like, he wasn't the one. Like, I'm the one here. Like, I'm the one. And so what is it that relationship was not like, instead of me trying to psychoanalyze, like, what's going on? Like, why did he do this? Like, what did I do? What does what happened tell me about myself? And so that was like a really big, like, pivotal learning. And I love that you also brought up the point of interdependence, because exactly, like, we look for people like, well, oh, I'm not good at budgeting, so like they do that, or they're not really good at like social interactions, so I plan all of that. And it's something where it's like, cool, but that's a codependency. What we want is exactly what you said, an interdependency, where maybe I'm not good at budgeting, but they teach me how. Maybe they're not good at social interactions, but I teach them how to, have more interpersonal communication skills. And so it's something where, because of our strengths, it's not that like that person fills the gap. It's that we teach them to each other so that we can both move forward and grow. And that is, I think, a good way to define interdependency. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's this, like I said, it's this balance, right? It's not that you can't ever do things for your partner and that's like considered codependency. Like, of course you can, right? It's, you don't want to take responsibility for them.
Right.
And I know for people who aren't super familiar with healthy relationships, that might sound like, well, that's weird. Like, of course you're responsible for how they feel. Of course you're responsible for, and like, again, it's like, yes, you do have a responsibility to show up healthy, to, show up in a secure way and make sure that you're doing the work on your shit on your end. But really, like, we're not responsible for how people perceive us. Yeah. We're not responsible for managing people's emotions, because then you're talking about things like people pleasing, and getting into those, that whole arena. And again, that's like unhealthy codependence that we can't be codependent and also be in a healthy relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's an important thing that I would remind people of, is that you are not responsible for how other people respond to you. You're not responsible for managing their emotions. And again, those are things that you may have learned to do when you were young at some point in your life, but you now have an opportunity as an adult and for the health of your adult relationships to learn how to almost unlearn all of those things that you learned to do and now replace them with something new.
Yeah. Yeah. You are not responsible for doing other people's emotional labor. And I think it's something where when we do that, we're actually doing them a disservice, because by doing that work for them, they're not ever going to learn it. It's kind of like give someone a fish or teach them how to fish. And so if I'm just giving you fishes, if I'm just doing your emotional labor, then you were never going to learn how to actually do these things on your own. And so in that way, I'm keeping you small.
Yeah, I'm taking your power away.
Yeah.
And holding it for myself, really,
Yeah.
because I'm keeping, exactly like you said, I'm keeping you small. I'm
Yeah.
keeping you dependent on me.
Yeah.
And
I
we
want to
think
point
in
out,
our minds that it's like helpful, like I'm doing this for them. I'm like, I love them so much. I want them to, be happy. But
right.
really, when you think about it on the flip side, you're really doing them a disservice.
Yeah. And I want to point out, like, we're not saying any of this to shame anyone. We're saying this to empower you with the awareness so that now you know this, because most people don't realize these things. So sometimes too, I'll be moving through life, having these realizations and like looking at things from this perspective. And I'm like, how do people who don't know this, like, how do they manage? And that's why we are here telling you the shit that we wish someone told us about healthy relationships, because these are things that you need to know, and things that you need to know when it comes to, why you potentially haven't had them in the past. And so, yeah, like, I love all of that. And, another thing we talked about is, when people feel powerless, like you just said, and, when we pick these emotional unavailable partners, like, what's the cost in all of this? What's the cost in people pleasing and in not having healthy relationships?
Yeah. So to me, I mean, the cost is different for everybody, but most of the time I see and have experienced myself, um, the cost is that you're chasing, you lose yourself, right? The cost is that you feel like you can't be authentic with somebody who like has this guard up and who won't let you in and who won't choose you. um I hear a lot of women say, like, I don't feel like I can be myself, like I don't feel like I can make jokes and laugh and play. I just constantly feel like I'm always thinking about the relationship and how to fix it and how to change it and how to make it into what I want it to be. um for me, when I was going through this, the cost was that I would spend so much time literally trying to like change someone. And what I learned was that, like, me choosing emotionally unavailable men was really a reflection of my own emotional unavailability. So all of that time that I spent focusing on someone else, I was really just avoiding myself and avoiding the work that I needed to do on me. And I was always running, which I didn't realize. Because even though I was like chasing these people and trying to change them and get them to choose me, I'm really running. I'm running from what I actually wanted. I'm running from myself, and I'm running from the relationship that I actually wanted.
Yeah.
Because the guys I chose weren't going to give that to me.
Right.
Ever.
Right. And so in that sense, it was safe because you didn't have to look at yourself.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And these guys were safe because they were what I was familiar with. An emotionally available guy always felt very scary to me.
Right. Because that would mean that you would be growing.
Right.
Yeah.
And they would actually give me the relationship I wanted, which, yeah, consciously I wanted that. I wanted the long-term relationship, the commitment, the affection. But when it was offered to me, I pushed it away because I was terrified of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a real catch-22. It's a real bitch in that way, because oftentimes, yeah, like we want, again, like the healthy relationship, but when it's there in front of us, we oftentimes self-sabotage because it's something where we also, as much as we want it, to that same degree, we are terrified of it.
Yes.
And
most people don't know that that's a fear. Most people don't know that self-sabotage is actually self-protection.
yeah.
When you're sabotaging, you're trying to protect yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Thank you for, reminding people of that, because you're right. Like it's not that we're doing this to sabotage ourselves. Like it's exactly like what you said. We're doing this to keep ourselves in the familiar known. And that happens at pretty much any cost, whether it is, picking fights, or whether it is,
cheating,
or not communicating, or misinterpreting communications. And it's something where our ability to expand and like grow and develop as a person, as a human, is really dependent upon our ability to, like, the level at which we are willing to get honest with ourselves. And so oftentimes, like, that's really scary, because if I have to get honest with myself, oh shit, that means that like I'm going to have to change. And if I have to change, then my body is going to be feeling some kind of way about it, because it's like, we don't know what this, we don't know this new bitch. We don't know her. Like,
yeah.
We know this other one. We know we can do that. We know it sucks, but we know we can do it.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like settling for being a B student when you could be an A student. You just gotta, study an extra hour, or you just have to like change your study techniques, or like whatever. But it's like you're comfortable being the B student, because the B student's not bad, but we could definitely be an A.
The B student is safe.
The B student is safe. Yeah, I can cruise control on the B student. Like, I don't really have to put much thought into it. It's good enough. It's settling, essentially. The B student is essentially like settling.
Absolutely. And you just mentioned something just before that almost brought up the word shame for me. And the reason that comes to mind is because as we're doing this work on ourselves, I'm almost trying to move into this like new way of being, and this not this new person, because I always tell people, like, it's not you. It's not a problem with you. You are great, but there's things that are kind of blocking you from having what you want. And I think as we do this work, a lot of the time it can bring up shame. And the way that I see that play out is often like, oh, why did I spend so much time in that relationship? Like, why did I do that? Why did I let him treat me like that?
Right.
And that's a lot of the time, that's, I mean, a bunch of different emotions, but really what I see is coming up is shame.
Yeah.
And speaking to this like process of learning to accept yourself, what that looks like is we really do have to accept the parts of ourselves that we dislike, and the parts of ourselves that we like don't want to look at, don't pay attention to. We almost kind of like push them away. Some people might call that like your shadow self.
I was just going to say, for anyone who follows the woo accounts or the spiritual gurus, or may have, been fed those posts. Yeah, this is called the shadow work, what she's referring to. So yeah, thank you for saying
and
that.
It's like integrating that, like all of those parts of ourselves. Like none of us, I think something that when I say this to people, they're like, yeah, you're right. We all have these parts to ourselves, and we are all human, right? Like there is nobody out there who has it all figured out. There is nobody out there who's in such a perfect relationship that they never fight. That's actually unhealthy to me. Like, I think conflict is healthy. We all have these parts, and it's just part of the human experience. It's part of being human.
Yeah.
But we like tend to go into this bubble where we're like, it's a problem with me. There's something wrong with me. Why can't I figure this out? Brings up that shame, but you really just have to remember, like, this is not just you.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. This is like a human thing. You're human. Yeah. You're experiencing the same things that so many other people are experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that validation and that acknowledgement, because one of the things that, so you mentioned that in your experience, like one of the main problems with people not being in healthy relationships is the loss of identity. And I can speak, that's happened for me in the past. Like I've spent so much time and effort, like investing in the other person. I have literally had conversations where I've been like, I feel like I'm losing myself. Like I remember saying those words. I remember where we were when I like told the person I told that. And they responded, well, I don't know how much more I can give you right now. And younger Johnna was just like, all right, well, I guess I'll have to just exist on crumbs, if you will. Johnna now would have been like, love you, mean it, but I gotta go. Like,
Oh yeah.
but back then, this was several years ago, probably like a decade or so. I'm telling my age, but yeah, like it's something where I very very strongly identify with like losing my identity, because I invested so much into trying to make the relationship work, not just to make the person happy, but to make the relationship work. And like, what does that say about me? You know, like like you said, should have been investing that in myself, because it's something where I was doing the things, I was putting the energy into something, I was nurturing something. However, what really needed to be nurtured was myself. And oftentimes we develop these habits. We want to nurture something because we give others what we wished would have been given to us. And so whenever we are younger, it's something where, you know, if your parent was, and you brought this up, and so I'm going to speak to it now. It's something where oftentimes like there's big T trauma and there's little T trauma. And so big T trauma, like some serious shit happened. Not going to say anything for trigger warning purposes, but little T trauma are things that we don't necessarily always, you know, consider as trauma or neglect, but that very much can be considered that. And I think that, you know, even if you had like a happy childhood, you could have still been experienced or exposed to trauma. And so for me personally, sharing my own experience, I've spoken about this before. My mother had her own mental health concerns. And so while she was an amazing mother and a great parent, at the same time, the very next day, she could just like be in bed and I wouldn't see her for days at a time. And, you know, they never told me, they always told me, they being my parents, always told me like, it's not your fault. Like she loves you. She just wants everyone to be happy. And so I wouldn't say that I had a bad or a rough childhood at all. And at the same time, I recognize that that type of behavior and that type of experience for me has led me to expect for relationships to be painful, because I will get in this relationship. I'm treated very well. I'm like, oh my God, this is so awesome. And then they will just disappear. And it's something where that has happened before. And it's something where it's almost as if I have come to expect that. And so while consciously I'm like, no, fuck that, I'm at the same time justifying it. And it's kind of like I'm a sucker for pain, because I'm like, but wait, like, hey, like we could work this out, but wait, but hey, because, and here's the kicker that some people may or may not know, and I know I'm talking a lot, I'm excited to hear what you have to say about this as soon as I stop, is that if I were to be able to correct that relationship, if I were to be able to make that relationship work where this person, you know, abandoned me, which is what my mom essentially did, right? By being awesome and then not being there and being emotionally unavailable. If I'm able to correct that, in a way, I have healed and corrected that part of my past. And so it's as if we are trying to go through these motions and like fix these patterns so that we can fix those parts of ourselves. And we can do that in relationships. And that's what we do in healthy relationships. We hurt in relationships and we heal in relationships. And at the same time, it's something where you need to have the discernment to know when enough is enough and it's hurting you more than it's healing you. And it's time to walk away.
Oh, 1000%. And thank you for sharing that experience. And I could say I've had a somewhat similar one, just in terms of like having a great childhood, being loved. And you're right, it doesn't always look like big T trauma, what people think trauma means.
Right.
Trauma is really the event. It's not the event, sorry. It's not the event, it's the emotional impact it had on you. So yes, we could have great parents, a loving childhood. But our parents may have said things to us or expected things from us, or, you know, even did things to us that caused us to form these limiting beliefs, and we have these wounds, right?
To write those scripts that we didn't even know were being written.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're right. Unconsciously, through our adult relationships, a lot of times we are trying to heal that old wound, right? It's that pattern that repeats and repeats and repeats. And I can tell you something that I learned on my journey was that I was choosing men who were similar to my father, right? And of course, I had no awareness of this until it was finally reflected to me, and I was doing the work, and I had someone holding me accountable and like holding that mirror up for me. And I realized, like, yeah, I'm choosing men who are like my father, and my father was wonderful. Like, he is, he's always loved us. He's been there for us, but there was that like emotional unavailable aspect. And he showed his love in different ways than what I wanted as a child. And the other piece to this also, that it's not just about your relationship with your parent, it's also if your parents were together or had other relationships, they also modeled behaviors to you that you learned as well.
Yeah.
Right? Because when we're kids, we absorb everything. They always say, like, kids don't listen to what you say, they watch what you do.
Yep. We learn by mimicry.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think that this is the piece that so many people are unaware of, this whole like unconscious element to what we're doing. And I guess that's what we're saying is like the whole like premise of healing and learning to be in these healthier relationships is, yes, we want to heal those old wounds, but we want to do so in a conscious way.
Right.
Like, we don't want to project our pain onto other people.
Right.
Unknowingly.
Right.
Like, we want to be able to say, like to look at that shit that happened to us, right? Even though it's hard, it's painful. We want to be able to look at it and be like, okay, this happened, heal this. And also at the same time, do that work to unlearn the things that we learned and learn how to do something new.
Yeah.
To change our relationships, go forward.
Yeah.
Because that's the best gift you can give to yourself. And I know it's challenging. I tell people all the time, like, healing is not easy. No walk in the park.
Yeah.
But it's worth it.
Yeah. You mentioned it's the best gift that you can give to yourself. And I also think that it's the best gift that you can give to others, just like not to be like a Hallmark card, but to speak to, like, again, like that modeling of the behavior. If I'm able to do it, then it's going to show you, also, hey, this can be done. And while what I did might not be right for you, it's possible. And you can take some of the things that I learned and try them out for yourself and see what works for you. And that's what I was saying earlier. It's not that like you take this blueprint and, just apply it and like, boom, like this is just the Mad Libs, like fill it in. Like I just do these things. Like it's not like that at all, which is why a lot of, I think, self-help and self-development kind of gets a bad reputation in that way, because we think that life hack, we think that thing, if I just follow the steps, then it's all going to be better, because that's like what we're told. And that's not true. And I think that it's important that more people know that. And when it comes to, like you said, like healthy relationships, I think it's something where, yeah, like we need to understand where these patterns like come from. And it doesn't have to be a situation like you and I experienced where it happened so many times. We were like, fuck, I think I'm the problem. Like it can very much be something where you're in a healthy relationship and, it doesn't have to get to that breaking point, if you will, or that breakdown or that breakthrough point. Even it can simply be you listen to this right now, thinking about, like we said earlier, the relationships in your life and how you can make them even better if they're already healthy, and how you can start to identify which ones you might want to lean more in on and which ones you might want to start leaning out on. And so, yeah, we talked a lot about, because we were like, we're going to talk about what healthy relationships are. We haven't really necessarily talked about what they are so much yet.
Yeah.
And so I want to do that now. We've primarily spent most of our time so far talking about, how to identify like why we do the things that we do when it comes to relationships. And so let's shift gears to that direct approach, and let's talk about like, what does a healthy relationship look like?
What does it look like? So, again, I think this is always going to be different for everybody. We all have different needs, different desires, different wants. But to me, essentially, a healthy relationship is one where you can show up as who you are. Like I said before, you have two people who have awareness of themselves. I don't think it needs to necessarily be two people who are like doing work and going to therapy. That's not always necessary.
Right.
But two people who have enough awareness and have enough regulation, nervous system regulation, to come together and create something harmonious. To me, a healthy relationship, uh, when I think about that, it's somebody who respects you, somebody who honors you for who you are,
Mhm.
somebody who knows how to communicate with you, somebody who knows how to repair after rupture, somebody who's gentle with you, somebody who cares about your needs, somebody who understands how you want to be loved, somebody who feels safe. And I think the most important thing, because we can get so stuck on, like the healing aspect of things and working on the relationship, healthy people, healthy relationships, you're not always working on the relationship. You're enjoying each other. You're having fun. You're laughing. You're playing. You're joking around. You're taking trips together. And I think that's a really important piece to it, that there's play.
Yeah.
That there's time for you to enjoy each other.
Yeah. It's like the whole notion of you're not always working in the business, but working on the business, but kind of like the opposite here, like being in the
Right.
relationship and then taking some time, yes, to like work on the relationship. I think that, yeah, I
Absolutely.
love that you mentioned it looks different for everyone, because I agree. And I think that with that, there are some characteristics that healthy relationships do tend to have. And you mentioned a lot of them. So thank you for sharing that. The safety part is, I think, huge, because most of us don't even know what that feels like. And I think that we spoke about this in another episode where, the whole like, we've got chemistry thing. That's actually, like you spoke, like your nervous system being like, hey, red flag. Like,
My gosh, yes, 100%. And
yeah,
that's something so many people think is like part of like finding the right relationship. And I'm like, it's not.
right. Right.
Yeah.
And like so many people, even on like dating apps and things like that, they're like looking for the chemistry. And I'm like, do you know that that's actually not what we don't want the butterflies. We don't want the nervousness. Like, I shouldn't be apprehensive or anxious to see you. I should feel calm and excited. And granted, excitement and nervousness, they're similar reactions in the body, but at the same time, like, which is which kind of a thing.
Right.
And
Right.
so this isn't a matter of trying to trick yourself like, oh, I do actually like them, which I know you do. I know you listening and watching. I know that person's not good for you, but you're like, oh, well, let me talk myself into it. I've done it. I'm not, shaming anyone. I have done it.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying,
Same.
like, be mindful of if you're doing that. And again, why, if you
Right.
find yourself doing that. Some other
Yeah.
things that I think are evident of a healthy relationship is, like you said, you feel like you can be yourself, like you feel like you can be authentic, like I can crack jokes. And it's something where when there is, like, I love that you mentioned like healthy conflict, when there is something where it's like, oh, that comment didn't really land well with me, I don't feel like you're going to hold a grudge for that or be mad at me for it. I feel that we're able to discuss it and I'm able to respect your boundary and like not make a comment like that again. And that's a way of showing love. That's a way of building relational equity. I think that making sure that, or whenever you are in a relationship that's healthy, you feel seen for who you are. And like, that's like what you had mentioned as well. Like, you feel like validated in like
Yep.
your sense of self. You feel respected. I think feeling safe is, like we already mentioned, and also like relaxed and just calm. Like, those are
Peace.
all
At
things.
peace.
At peace. Yeah, like I shouldn't be walking on eggshells like, oh, well, my partner, or we can take this to any relationship, my friend, my parent, my family, my roommate, they had a bad day, like, let me like maybe not say something to them. Then a healthy relationship would more often than not be able to recognize, oh, that person, let's just take me for example, Johnna had a bad day. I need to give her some space right now. I need to let her know that I'm here and I need to give her some space. That would make me feel seen, known, and heard and validated. What would not make me feel seen, known, heard, and validated would be if someone like recognized that and they try to like come and like talk to me like, oh, hey, like something seems wrong. Like, are you okay? Like, can I do anything? Like, leave me alone. Like,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
and as you get to know someone, I'm not saying like people should just expect to know these things about you. it's also your job to know these things. And this is where we go back to self-discovery, right? It's important that you know these things about yourself so that you can communicate them in a kind manner, not yelling at them like, leave me the fuck alone, right? Like
Absolutely.
that's not.
And that's that regulated nervous system piece, right? Like when we're dysregulated is when you're gonna like take it out on somebody, and
Exactly.
arguments are gonna start. And I think what you're talking about really is boundaries, right? Having a healthy sense of boundaries.
Yeah.
Whether that's with yourself and your partner, right? And being able to say like, hey, listen, like I had a bad day. Like, can we talk later? I just kind of like need a little space right now. And on the flip side, being able to respect when that's what your partner
Yes.
needs.
Yes. And that is indicative of a healthy relationship, like having those boundaries. And if it's something where you don't have that type of like if you don't have that type of independence where you're able to say like and speak for yourself and be who you are, then that is a red flag. So the green flag would be able to, create these boundaries, and not as a wall to keep someone up, but as a bridge to help you to navigate the relationship more effectively for both people. That's a green flag.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
yeah, 100%.
So
and I want to mention something really quickly that you said before, going back to how you said that instant chemistry is actually indicative of like what that is your nervous system is almost like recognizing unconsciously like there's something familiar about this person, right? So you feel that instant chemistry. And I want to remind people, like we said, if that's what your pattern has been, you enter in these relationships with this like instant chemistry, it's like all encompassing, there's like love bombing, and it hasn't worked out, well then we need to different. We need to look for something different in the beginning, right? When we're dating. And I will remind people that when you're doing this work, when you're starting to try to change these patterns, that the people that feel boring and where you don't get those butterflies and that instant spark, those are more likely to be the people who are going to give you the relationship that you want.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important to let people know, is that like the people you actually probably want to be with are probably really boring. They feel boring. They're not boring. They feel boring.
Right.
Because when you experience somebody who has like that more secure attachment, they are a little more independent, and they can give you that interdependence of like giving to the relationship and also like being on their own. Sometimes that can feel really threatening.
Right.
And that's really important for me to remind people of all the time, is that like there's not actually something wrong with them. We have to also look at like what might be happening within you.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. And I think, like that excitement, like you said, those butterflies, like, that could actually be your body reminding you like, oh, remember this didn't work out last time.
Yeah, it could actually be your trauma. Like,
yeah. And so that again goes into that self-awareness piece and knowing about yourself and doing the things that you need to do in order to discover more about yourself and like, what are these sensations saying? One of the things, I believe I saw this on John Kim. We both graduated from the program that he co-created. We got our certifications from there. But one of the things that he said, I believe it was him in a post, was when it comes to dating, instead of looking at it like, oh, well, what can this person give me? Perhaps consider entering the relationship, or perhaps consider engaging in, the dating experience or process with them with the lens of, what can I learn about myself in this?
yes.
Which I was like, oh, that's good. That's real good.
Really good.
Instead of like, oh, well, like I'm bored, let me go on a date. Let me swipe right on some people.
Yeah.
Like, what
intentional dating.
Yeah. Which hell, we could do a whole episode on that. But
for sure.
Yeah, like what could this experience and this process like tell me about myself? I was like, that is good.
And that's hard to do, especially if you're running from yourself.
That's hard to do.
But it's powerful. It's powerful though. Like learning to come from that place of like, I'm going to date intentionally. I'm going to date not just to be chosen, but I'm going to actually be conscious of like who I'm giving my energy to.
Yeah.
I'm going to be conscious of who I'm choosing, because I have that power. Maybe I haven't tapped into it yet, but I have that power. I always have. I
Yeah.
get to do the choosing.
Yeah. And one thing, I don't remember if we spoke about this, but like, would you date yourself is like a good question.
Ooh, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
are you in the position where you would date yourself? Like
Yeah.
right now as it
Absolutely.
stands today, if you
Yeah.
asked you on a date at Whole Foods, that's the only place that I would probably be asked on a date because I don't go anywhere. But if someone were to ask me on a date at Whole Foods, if I were to ask me on a date at Whole Foods, would I want to date me? So like that's something to consider.
Yeah. Something, a hard truth I think that people need to hear is that you are the common denominator in all of your relationships.
Yeah.
So looking at that, going back to that shadow piece, you have to take accountability for what your role is in this, because you do have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really eye-opening for people, that it's not just like there's so many like effed up men in the world. Like there's actually an element here that comes back to you. And you ask the question, like, would you date yourself? And I almost pose that as like, are you showing up as the person that you are trying to be with?
Yeah.
Like, are you embodying those qualities?
Yeah. Instead of finding someone that like checks off all of your boxes, like, do you check off your boxes, and like, what parts do you need to work on in order
Right.
to be ready for the healthy relationship? And this again isn't to shame anyone or say anything's wrong with you, but it is to say that like, if you are in the position where you have always, chosen the more exciting ones that, quote unquote exciting, that give you butterflies and all that, then perhaps it's something where you need to recognize those patterns so that you choose differently this next time. And maybe that's the piece. Maybe that's the piece of yourself that you need to shift a little bit in order to actually be prepared on your own to have healthy relationships. Maybe it's, a matter of figuring out what you're doing, like your qualifying process, if you will, because we all have one. I'm not saying like we're all standing with our checklist, but I'm saying like we have a subconscious, does this person fit this list kind of a thing. And so while we may have, the conscious lists that we're aware of, that might not be in alignment with what our subconscious is actually choosing, because that's going to go to the familiar. So that brings us to how do people actually cultivate healthy relationships? And so I'm going to kick it off. Like I already just said it there. The first thing is acknowledging these patterns that you might have and getting clear on that. So seeing where you are, talking the talk, but maybe not walking the walk kind of a thing. So like recognizing like, is this, and we're not saying everyone is doing this, but the patterns that you learn and how you relate to others, you learn somewhere. And unless you have taken the time to step back and look at it, chances are you could probably go in for a tune-up. And again, this isn't to shame anyone. This is just to say that like, we can all do better. And so even if you were doing good, kudos to you. If you've done the work, if you're continuing to do the work, it is a constant process and the work is never done. And it's something where, you don't always have to be, I think this is important to note as well, you don't always have to be in pursuit of personal development and growth. Like sometimes we need those periods of like, okay, I just, reached a big milestone and I recognize that this is a pattern in my relationships. And so now that I have that, recognition, maybe it's something where I just kind of sit with that recognition for a little while. You don't have to do something about it. You don't have to go out and try to, fix it tomorrow. But, knowing again, self-awareness, self-discovery, knowing enough about yourself to recognize these patterns and to know when it is time for you to, okay, let me do a little bit more, or when it is time for you to just sit with what you've just learned.
Oh my God, absolutely. And I think that's one of the most powerful things about like having support, or even having a coach or whatever that means to you, is that I think for so many people that I work with, they don't even realize the monumental things that they're doing for themselves. Like they don't even understand it. Even just gaining awareness of something you did that you didn't know you did 2 weeks ago is huge,
Yeah.
especially in this healing process. It's huge. And I try to like slow down and take a beat to like remind them of that. Like what you just said to me, or the realization you just had, is so big, because you didn't have that a few weeks ago. You had no idea. And this is the work. It's like baby steps. And sometimes it may not feel big to you or feel like you achieved anything. But I can see looking at that client like, oh my gosh, like that's incredible.
Yeah.
And like you said, really the first step to any of this before we can really jump into changing anything is that awareness piece.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to point out and piggyback off something that you just shared about how people don't realize, how monumental what they perceive as a little thing, a little realization is. And I think that's because our society has like hijacked our brains essentially into only considering these big, type of like life-changing experiences as things worth celebrating. And that goes the same. I mean, God, sidebar, main bar, but we can take this to anything about how like we're so overstimulated for success.
Yep.
And so it's something where whenever you have these maybe not quite so like sexy, for lack of a better term, type of realizations and changes and shifts, it's something where we don't give ourselves the credit that we deserve for actually, like you said, having them. And so, yeah, I want to just point that out there for everyone whose success system or whose success rating has been hijacked.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like it does not have to be like some big, huge thing. Like give yourself, and also I'm not saying like, let's give participation trophies out. Like, I'm not saying that either, but I'm saying like,
of course,
acknowledge yourself whenever you do the things, because it's not easy, like Rachel mentioned earlier. And it's something where you deserve to celebrate that. And like I said, it's something where like, that might be good. Like you need to, when you have that awareness, just kind of sit with it. Because if you've been living your life for 20, 30 years without that awareness and suddenly you have it, that's a huge thing that you just realized. And so if you on, today, July 23rd, realized, hey, this is, this realization that I had, then on July 24th, you don't need to really necessarily do anything about it. Like you're still marinating on it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
I tell my clients all the time, like the things we talk about in session, like they're going to hit you like when you're out living life, not in session. Like you're going to have something happen in life and it's going to bring you back to something I said in a session or something you realized in a session. You're going to make that connection. That's when the powerful stuff happens. And just bringing it back to what you said before, we're not always like working on ourselves. We do have to sort of like take these little moments that feel little, but they're actually, to me, they're like really exciting. And really just like sit back and enjoy it. Like sit back and excuse me,
savor,
and recognize, savor it, right? Like, as we've said so many times, this work is not easy. So we kind of need to like have compassion for ourselves. We really need to have compassion for ourselves, and also learn that balance of like, yeah, I'm going to continue to work on myself. That's what life is. Like we're always reaching new levels, new layers. There's always work to be done. However, like you're doing so much work on yourself, you got to give yourself the chance to like enjoy that too, and enjoy life. Enjoy the whole reason that you're doing it in the first place.
Yeah. I love that. And that goes back to the concept of play that you mentioned, like, just like enjoy being like, yeah, you don't always have to be like striving for success, or for like that next level. So we've mentioned in terms of creating a healthy relationship, recognizing, so the awareness, getting out of the pattern. Another thing we talked about is creating a healthier relationship with yourself. And so in order to do that, like you've mentioned so many times, you have to learn to accept yourself. And like I mentioned, you have to learn like who you even are. And so you talked about, like healing your nervous system and understanding the ways in which it's trying to protect you by keeping you stuck, which is like what you mentioned earlier about like self-sabotage is actually self-protection.
Sure.
Yeah. I thought that was
goes
great.
Back to that concept of like, we can't change something until we until we know about it, until we're aware of it. And I think, most people don't consider the relationship they have with themselves. They don't consider, do they really know themselves? Do they really know what they want? Are they really thinking about in terms of relationships, like the type of partner they want to be with, how they want to feel, or are they kind of just going with the motions?
Mm-hmm.
But it is really, really important to get in touch with what it is that you want and almost like build, like they're like building blocks, right? Yeah, that's all, to me, that's all part of cultivating this relationship with you.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know who you are, like you're going in blind,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
just kind of hoping for the best, which
Yeah.
is the term I like to use a lot. Yeah. So how do we create a healthy relationship with ourselves? We're going to do a whole ass episode on this, but for anyone who like right now today is listening and who is like, oh, damn, this makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And
Yeah.
also, what are some things that we can offer that can help people to start to get to know themselves a little bit better and create that healthy relationship with themselves?
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, after that awareness piece, because we've talked a lot about that, you also have this mindfulness piece,
Mm-hmm.
which is essentially like we spoke about before, identifying your own behaviors and your own like feelings, emotions, getting in touch with that. Um, and I think as coaches, we try to like provide people with tools for mindfulness. And one of my favorite tools is actually journaling. Because we really get to, there's so much power in like putting our thoughts and words onto paper and being able to see it.
Mm-hmm.
At least I think so. And really just like getting used to looking at situations in terms of how we feel.
Yeah.
For me, another way to practice mindfulness is like getting out in nature, learning to be alone,
Mm-hmm.
um, reading books, learning, educating myself, and most importantly to me, having support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for anyone who's listening and watching, because I know we're not the first people to say, hey, journaling is good for you. And it's not just, something that you think, like research has proven like it is beneficial. And so if you have heard that before and you do not journal, then let this be your invitation to try it out, because you have not been hearing it multiple places from multiple people because we're just talking out of our asses. Like it's because it actually is beneficial. And we spoke about that in episode 50, the importance of being alone, where we talked about, how you can actually start to create a journaling practice. And something that I offer people is, if you are someone who's like, well, I can't sit and write. I know a lot of people who have ADHD, that's a very much that kind of like just thinking about like sitting down and writing about my feelings. If that's something that you're not feeling your feelings can be very anxiety inducing, then something
Sure.
that I like to suggest is to like pull out your phone and like go for a ride in your car and just like hit the record button and voice note. Like
Yeah.
that way your phone can be beside of you so you're safe and you're talking in your car, like no one's ever going to hear it, kind of a thing. You can also, like Rachel said, she likes to go for a walk and like be in nature. You can go for a walk and you can talk to yourself and
Sure.
voice note in that way. And pretend as because if you're listening to this, like, well, that's stupid. Like, what would I say to myself? Pretend like you're calling your best friend. Like, what would you tell your best friend? Oh my God, I just had this thing happen to me. I'm feeling like, X, Y, and Z. That's just how it starts. And you are going to
Yeah.
start to become more familiar with this practice. And that is a form of journaling. And I love that form of journaling because, first of all, it's just easy. You can do it anywhere. Second of all, because it's something where you can listen to yourself back. And so you can hear like the tone and the emotion in your voice. And
Sure.
oftentimes when we phone a friend, what do? We solve our own problems. So this is like a
Yeah.
way to do that by yourself. And lastly, I'm really selling this voice note, like as if I invented voice noting. I'm making commission. I'm really selling the voice noting. So it's cool because you obviously talk faster than you write. And so it's something where
Right.
you just let it flow. Just let it flow. So yeah, I think that that's definitely a way to start to lean into your feelings and what you're feeling and get to know who you are. Another way to get to, create that healthy relationship with yourself is, I think, to identify what it is that you want outside of the physical attributes. Like, I want to have a job, good credit score, like whatever. What are the things that you want them, what are these non-physical things? How do you want to feel? Which is something that you mentioned. A lot of people, we can't even say how we feel about situations. How do you want to feel when you were with that person that you want to have a healthy relationship with? And again, not just romantic.
Yeah.
How do you want to feel whenever you're with your friends? Because I'm gonna be honest with you,
Absolutely.
some people, you've got shitty friends. I'm just gonna say it. Like,
Oh yeah.
I've had shitty friends, not now, but like
Right.
I'm saying that because I've been there. And so you don't have to get to the point where they stab you in the back or let you down. Like you can use this as an opportunity right now because we're giving you the awareness. Our gift to you right now and right here is the awareness. And so you get to kind of take that time to consider like, well, how do I want a safe, how do I want my healthy relationship to feel? Do I want to be able to call that person and be like, hey, I have a flat tire. Like, could you come get me and have them come pick you up? Like, do you want to be able to have that kind of trust? Or do you want someone that you know is going to see your call and not answer? Like, I mean, I think we both know the answer to that question, but things to consider whenever you're thinking about what it means to have a healthy relationship. And when you also are thinking about cultivate a healthy relationship with yourself, because like we said, self-discovery, big part of healthy relationship with self and others, is what are the things that you are saying to yourself inside of your head all day, every day? We talked about the awareness of patterns we have in relational dynamics with others, but what are the things that you are saying inside of your head to yourself? Because that is impacting your perception of how others see you. If you are always telling yourself day in and day out, oh, what a piece of shit. Like, I can't believe that you're so clumsy. I can't believe you are so disorganized. Then you are going to think, oh, well, this person must think that I'm, disorganized. This person must think that I'm, lazy or whatever it is that you're thinking, a piece of shit, like whatever it is that you're thinking inside of your head. So be mindful of that, because like Rachel mentioned, whenever it comes to projecting, you could be projecting your own damn thoughts about yourself onto others and thinking that they're perceiving you as such. And that might not be the case. And so those are all things that I think, I mean, that's a lot of homework for you. That's a lot of homework.
It sure is. Yeah.
For you to do when it comes to thinking about, those healthy relationships. And so with all of that, what are your key takeaways or final words to everyone? What do you want people to walk away with from this conversation today?
Yeah. Well, first I want to add something really quick to what you just said about you have shitty friends. I think on the flip side of this, you might have relationships in your life where we didn't get too much into attachment today because that's a whole thing, but essentially you might have relationships in your life that are more secure, right? Where you are actually experiencing more of that secure attachment, relationships that feel safe. So for a lot of people I work with, they actually feel really safe with their friendships. And it's almost in their romantic relationships where it's like disaster and all this like, insecurity being bounced around. And you can actually borrow from those relationships. And that's like this like awareness, mindfulness piece, right? Like if you can actually tell yourself, like make a list of what the special qualities of your, whether it's friendships, family, what are the qualities of those relationships that feel safe, that feel good to your nervous system? And how can we almost like learn to bring those over to the problematic relationships, which maybe for you, that's it's different for everybody, but
like a transfer situation.
Exactly. Right. Like I'm able to show up this way in my friendships, which by the way, like friendships and romantic relationships are so freaking different. So like, it's not a comparison of the two. However, it is like that awareness piece of like, I'm able to show up with my friends this way. Like, how can I get myself to show up this way in romantic relationships? So you can almost borrow from those relationships and teach your nervous system like what's possible.
Yeah. I love that.
I just wanted to add that, like that flip side to like what you said.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, thank you. Because I'm like, they're shit, but they're also
no, but it's true.
Like I said, yeah, like my relationships have gotten better, and so yeah, that is something I love that you like leverage what's working. Right, work smarter, not harder. And so exactly like Rachel said, like I love that. I'm not gonna repeat what you said, but yes, take what's working and see how you can apply it to other situations, because how we do anything is how we do everything. I've said that before, I'll say it again. And I've heard people say like, how I, run my business is not how I like make love to my partner. And I'm like, that's not like the chances are it probably is. There's probably some overlap. If you are, understanding and take feedback in one area, probably gonna do it the other.
Like, absolutely. Yeah. And your attachment is almost the same in like your business as it is in your relationships.
So so think about those borrowed skills. I like that you use those borrowed like transfer skills, like see what's working in your life, and then see how you can invite that into other areas that might not be working so well, or that you want to work better. Maybe it's something that, like I said, you don't have to be in a shitty relationship to make it a better one. And so I think that that's important. And so, yeah, what's working really well in one, you can bring it into the other. So yeah, that's awesome. So thank you for that. So that's a key takeaway. Number one, self-sabotage is self-protection. That's a key takeaway.
Absolutely.
What I mentioned earlier in terms of, it's not your fault, which is what you had mentioned.
Yes.
This is not your fault. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. But being able to identify that, hey, you're actually doing yourself a favor in trying to solve this past problem in this current situation. However, you might be going about it in the wrong way.
Absolutely.
Or in a way that's like not productive. And so just inviting you to have the awareness for that, I think would be another takeaway that I would suggest. What takeaways do you have? Or did I name them all? I named a lot.
Yeah. So one thing that came to mind for me is that I often tell people, like, it's not you. And I said this before, like, it's not that you as a person are the issue. I always say it's not you, it's your nervous system, right? Like, we can actually like put all of this on our nervous system, even though like not to make it, like, we actually want to befriend our nervous system, right? So not to make it an enemy, but like you said, like, self-sabotage is self-protection. Our nervous system is trying to keep us safe. But key takeaway, it's not you. Like, you are not broken. You are not necessarily, you're not in any way deserving of unhealthy relationships. We just kind of got to get you to a place where you feel confident, you have a good relationship with yourself, you feel good. And by the way, like, feeling insecure is normal. So it's not like getting to this place of like where you absolutely love yourself and you're so healed, and then you could be in a good relationship, a healthy relationship. You said it earlier, relationships are actually healing.
Yeah.
And I think a really big part of that is that we have to allow for the people that we are in relationships with to reflect things to us. And it's not just about what they're doing wrong, but like, it's more like, what can I learn from this? What's the lesson I can take away from this? What's this feedback telling me?
Yeah. And God, I mean, I could continue this conversation for a long ass time. Something that you said that reminded me of something is, we have to allow people in. I think oftentimes whenever we are talking about relationships and being in connection community with others, it's something where, again, like we've spoken, we look like we point the finger outside of ourselves. Like, it's not us, it's, it's someone else. Like, well, I'm just, I just can't find the right person, or I can't, like, that might be true. Some people are assholes, but at the same time, we can probably develop the skills to at least get to know that person well enough so that we can decide and discern, is this person someone that I want to befriend or be in a romantic relationship with, or whatever. And it's something where we are often unknowingly so reserved and cut off because it is a protection mechanism that we learned long ago and far away to not let others in. Because if we don't let others in, then we are going to remain the ones that are in control of the situation, because there's less variables to control. There's, a higher likelihood I know what's going to happen. And it's something where we don't have to worry about others hurting us or disappointing us, because they never get close enough to do so. We never allow them to know us enough to develop feelings for us. And they're in return, we don't ever develop the feelings for them, because we don't really know who they are either. Relations are, a give and a take, and they are an exchange. And like we said, they are an interdependency, and building relational equity requires vulnerability. And it's something where if you aren't in the position to, and again, this goes back to knowing yourself and self-discovery, if you don't know enough about yourself to know what you are comfortable revealing and when, it can be something where you like disclose too much too soon, and you don't, have the skills to notice, the interpersonal skills to notice, like, oh, that might have scared that person away, kind of a thing. And so it's really, I love what you said. It's like a process. There is no one size fits all solution. And it's something where, there's so many different ways that we can look at relationships from, different perspectives, because each perspective is different. Like, as many people as exists on this planet today, that's how many perspectives there are when it comes to relationships. And so I did just want to bring up the vulnerability aspect there, because I think a lot of us have become so accustomed to like building up walls. And I know that based on like my age group, there was the whole culture of, well, fuck them, fuck their feelings, fuck the feelings. Like, I don't need anybody, like, different people in different area codes, like
Sure.
very much like not catching feels or whatever they called it. And so we got in this really detached type of a place. And so if we grew up thinking that that's what we're supposed to do, even if, it's something, again, we're consciously, aware of, we know on like a primal level, if I never let anyone in, then chances are I won't be hurt, or chances are I won't be hurt as bad.
Yeah.
And if we don't know how to self-regulate and deal with that hurt and that pain, then we might never let anyone in. And that's something where we go into considerations of, not just the importance of being alone, because alone is different from loneliness. Whenever we aren't vulnerable, we don't let people in, then we are impacted with, feelings of loneliness, which leads to low self-esteem, which leads to, just all these negative, like downward spirals of depression and anxiety and all these other things that have a negative impact on mental health. And so, yeah, we got real deep there at the end. I apologize, I cut you off. What did you want to say?
You didn't. No, I think everything you said was spot on. And speaking of vulnerability, I will remind everybody, if you've heard of Brene Brown, she has a quote, essentially, this is not the quote verbatim, but we can't block pain without also blocking joy.
Yeah.
You can't compartmentalize, you can't select what you're going to block. If you block one thing, you're blocking everything. And tying that back to what you're saying about vulnerability and having that guard and being scared to get hurt. Listen, we can't change being hurt. It's part of life. We can't control what someone else is going to do. We can't control being dumped or left or cheated on or anything like that. Fortunately, those are things that happen, right?
Yeah.
But it's really about getting yourself to a place where, you value yourself and your joy and your happiness and the things that you deserve so much that you're almost willing to like step into that vulnerability, and you're willing to, let hurt happen.
Yeah.
And you build up that resilience to work through it. And you know that you can get through it. Because if you're so guarded and you're not opening yourself up to the joys of love and how wonderful love can be, you're missing out.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. It's almost as if, the potential entering into, so I read something somewhere where it was like, love is giving someone all the power in the world to hurt you and trusting that they won't.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's kind of beautiful. And I think that I bring that up because I love your frame of that in terms of, how trusting ourselves to be vulnerable and go into these relationships. It really is self-trust. It's a matter of self-trust, which again, goes back to knowing yourself, trusting yourself to know that regardless of what happens, you are going to be okay. You are going to make it through to live to see another day. And that again goes back to, like I said, self-discovery. And it's something where when you are putting yourself, this is what I feel you were articulating so beautifully, is whenever you are like opening yourself up to that vulnerability, you are doing so out of love for yourself, because at the same time, you're offering yourself up for the experience of joy at the same capacity or at the same volume. And so it's something where it's like, like like it sucks. Like it's not, I will never tell you that like, you can't ever know what anyone else is going to do. And I will never tell you that like, oh, like it gets better or it, it won't hurt as much. It sucks.
It lasts forever. Yeah.
It sucks when someone, that you thought was going to be in your life suddenly lets you down or leaves or whatever the case may be. Like it sucks. And I wouldn't say, honestly, based on my experience, I wouldn't say that it hurts any less. I would say, if anything, this most recent time hurt more. And at the same time, it's something where I've never been this well equipped to navigate. And it was something where a lot happened at once. And looking back, like after the dust kind of settled, like months later, I was like, I don't know how I did all of that. And it's because I had the tools, like I was prepared. Was it easy? God, no. Would I wish it on anyone? No.
No. Yeah.
Would I want to do it again? Fuck no. Could I? I mean, obviously, like,
Yeah. Yeah. I think people are stronger than they believe they are.
yeah.
And we all go through hurt. We all go through pain. It's just part of being human, really.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're the person who hurts other people. You have to remember
Yep.
that too.
Yep. That's also true.
Yeah.
Oh, such good stuff. Okay. Well, thank you.
So
I
good.
have loved every second of this, and I'm so looking forward to our future conversations. So stay tuned for those. They will be upcoming. We have dates, but I don't honestly have them in front of me. But they will be coming up in the next couple months. So you'll get
Wow.
one a month from us moving forward for the next few months. So mark your calendars and look forward to. Thank you so much for being here. Where can they find you and what do you have going on?
Okay, so right now I'm on Instagram, Rachael.rsl. I'm also on TikTok. We have a lot of fun over there on TikTok if you're there. My handle is Rachael Ship, kind of like a play on relationships. Right now I'm offering one-on-one sessions, typically like a more customized experience for anybody who wants to really dive into this work. It's a 6 month journey, 6 month journey. It's a beautiful journey. And I'm actually about to release a group coaching offering, which is going to be a little bit more attainable to anyone who's not quite ready to do the one-on-one work. It's a little bit more affordable for anybody who's had that issue come up, but it's going to be really amazing. There's going to be a great sense of community. I really wanted to create something where women going through all of these issues, whether it's actively in a emotionally unavailable relationship, whether you've gone through a breakup, a divorce. I've been through a divorce, so I can speak to the fact that, it feels really lonely when you're going through this stuff. And I wish I knew back then that obviously there's so many people out there who have gone through divorce, a breakup, that support is available to you. You just have to know where to find it. So really it was my goal to create something with that support and a community where people can feel safe to work through these things that they're going through. So that's my intention with the group coaching. So stay tuned for announcements on that. I just sent out an email today to my email list for a special pricing on that. So if you're interested in anything like a newsletter or receiving those special offers or just fun tips, join my newsletter. It's all in the link in my bio.
And I'll make sure to link all that in the descriptions below. So just easy tap to it from there. I love that you saw a need and you created it. And so kudos to you for doing that. And yeah, I'm excited to see where that takes you and to hear more about it, like as it progresses. So congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you for sharing. So
of course.
What we have for you, since this episode is coming out on Monday, today is Monday, what we are going to be doing on Wednesday, you can head over to my Instagram at Hey Johnna Renée, all spelled out, also linked below in the descriptions. And we're going to be posting polls because we want to hear about your experience when it comes to healthy relationships and patterns that you may have had. And then on Friday, which will be July 29th at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, we are going to be going live on Instagram. You can check out either our Instagrams. It'll say that we're live on both. And we are going to be recapping this episode. We're going to be speaking to what you shared in the poll results on Wednesday. And we're also going to be answering any questions that you may have had because we want to know what questions you have. That's one of the questions that we ask in the polls on Wednesday. And we'll also be doing some live coaching for anyone that wants it. So make sure to tune in then. And if you are someone, like we mentioned a lot throughout this conversation, who is looking to discover more about yourself and who has tried the self-help, but it hasn't quite helped, then I created a resource to help explain to you why the self-help has not helped and what to do instead. And you can learn more about that at whenselfhelpisn'thelping.com, just all spelled out. Or you can just tap below and get it there. But otherwise, I hope that you got some value out of this conversation today. If you did, if you got anything from it, please do share it with someone and let them know some shit that you wish someone had told you about healthy relationships and relationships in general, like as we've shared. Because if, when you do that, you're helping, help them. And whenever you help them, we're helping us, we're helping all. We're creating healthy relationships by doing that. And so please do make sure to share with anyone that you might think will get some benefit out of this. And we will see you on Friday.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. We'll talk to you all later. Bye.